The rain hammered the windshield so fiercely it sounded like the heavens themselves were grieving. Ethan Marshall gripped the steering wheel of his aging pickup, his knuckles white with tension. The headlights struggled to slice through the curtain of relentless rain as he drove. Another job interview. Another polite rejection. Another, "we'll be in touch," that everyone knew was a lie. His dress shirt, once crisp, was now damp from hours spent in a drafty waiting room. His wallet was practically empty, except for a worn photo of his daughter. In the back seat, nestled under a tattered blanket, 6-year-old Maisie slept soundly, her small hands wrapped tightly around her stuffed rabbit, the one she never parted with. Ethan caught a glimpse of her in the rearview mirror, and his chest tightened painfully. She was his entire world now, the one thing he hadn't lost. After his wife's death 2 years prior, life had unraveled one thread at a time. The house had been the first to go, then the job, the savings, his self-assurance. Yet through it all, Maisie had remained, her trust in him unwavering even as he questioned everything else. His hands tightened further around the wheel as he turned onto the narrow, winding road leading to their cramped one-bedroom rental. The truck's heater sputtered, offering little resistance against the cold that seeped into every corner. The windshield wipers struggled to keep pace, groaning rhythmically in a sad accompaniment to the slow, steady erosion of his life. Every day felt like a losing battle against despair. But Ethan couldn't let Maisie see how close he was to surrendering. Not now. Not ever. The truck rattled along the potholed road. Ethan exhaled, watching his breath fog the windshield. He didn't know how much longer he could keep faking strength. The world had grown cruel and indifferent, and sometimes it felt like it was daring him to give up. But he wouldn't. Not for Maisie. Not as long as he still drew breath. Just as that thought crossed his mind, something caught his eye. A flicker of white through the torrent of rain. Something so out of place it jolted him upright. Instinctively, he slammed on the brakes. The truck skidded, mud spraying up from the shoulder as he struggled to control the slide. Finally, the vehicle came to a stop, the engine growling lowly. Ethan's heart pounded against his ribs, not from fear, but from a primal sense that something was terribly wrong. Leaving the truck idling, he cracked the door and stepped out into the storm, boots squelching into the sodden earth. Rain instantly soaked him to the bone, chilling him, but he pressed forward, drawn by the faint glimmer he had seen. At first, he thought it might be a discarded mannequin or a scarecrow blown from a nearby field. But as he drew closer, realization struck him like a thunderclap. It was a woman. She stood chained to a tree, her once beautiful white bridal gown torn and clinging to her slender frame, filthy from the mud and rain. Her feet were bare and battered. Her arms trembled violently. Her face was smeared with dirt and streaked with tears, but her eyes, wide, haunted, locked onto his with a silent, pleading desperation that cut through the storm like a blade. Ethan froze, his heart twisting painfully. "Are you okay?" he called over the roar of the rain, his voice breaking. She didn't speak. She didn't move. She simply stared, as if unsure whether he was real or another cruel trick of fate. Ethan scanned the area. No other cars. No lights. No houses in sight. Just her, alone, abandoned. His own burdens, the missed opportunities, the overdue bills, the gnawing fear of failing as a father, all fell away in that instant. Here was someone even more broken, more lost than he was. And he knew with a certainty that shook him that he couldn't just walk away. Without hesitating, he shrugged off his jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. She flinched at first, then sagged into the warmth, silent tears mingling with the rain. "You're safe now," Ethan whispered, unaware that by rescuing her, he was about to rescue himself. He worked quickly, running back to his truck to grab an old rusted bolt cutter he kept in the toolbox. His hands, numb with cold, fumbled at the thick, rusted chain that held her prisoner. After several tense minutes, the chain finally gave way with a sharp, metallic snap. Without a word, Ethan lifted her into his arms. She weighed almost nothing. He carried her to the truck, careful not to jostle her too much, and placed her gently on the passenger seat. Maisie stirred in the back, but didn't wake. The ride home was silent except for the steady drumming of rain against the roof. Ethan kept glancing at the woman, noting how she curled into herself, clutching his jacket like a lifeline. She was soaked, shivering violently, and obviously in shock. When they reached the modest rental, Ethan scooped her up again and carried her inside. Their little home was nothing special. Peeling paint, sagging floors, an old fridge that rattled every time it kicked on. But it was warm and dry. He laid her gently on the battered couch and covered her with every blanket he could find. Maisie, now awake, toddled over sleepily, her rabbit tucked under her arm. "Daddy, who's that?" she whispered wide-eyed. "She's a friend who needs our help," Ethan said softly, kneeling down to Maisie's level. "We're going to help her, okay?" Maisie nodded solemnly, reaching out to place her stuffed rabbit beside the woman as if offering comfort. The woman's lips moved, barely a whisper. Ethan leaned closer. "Elena," she breathed, before slipping into unconsciousness. Elena. He now had a name to match the broken figure he had found. That night, Ethan sat at the kitchen table, unable to sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Elena chained to that tree, saw the raw pain in her eyes. He didn't know what had happened to her, but he knew he couldn't let her go back to it. The next morning, Elena was awake, sitting at the table wrapped in a blanket. She stared at the steam rising from a mug of coffee Ethan had placed in front of her, but didn't touch it. Over the next few days, she said little. Only short, cautious answers to direct questions. She moved like a ghost, barely making a sound. Yet she quietly began to help. Folding laundry, fixing the broken hinge on a cabinet door, mending Maisie's stuffed rabbit without being asked. Maisie was the first to truly break through her shell. One morning, Ethan found the two of them on the living room floor, coloring with crayons. Maisie giggled uncontrollably as Elena shyly smiled, a small, genuine expression that lit up her entire face. The house began to feel different. Lighter, less heavy, less burdened by sorrow. Ethan didn't fully understand it yet, but he sensed that something fragile and beautiful was taking root. Late one evening, after Maisie had gone to bed, Ethan found Elena standing by the window, staring into the darkness beyond. He joined her silently, sensing she needed space. After a long moment, she spoke, her voice barely audible. "I was supposed to be married that day," she said, her voice cracking like drywood snapping. Ethan said nothing, letting her continue. "I didn't love him. I didn't even know him. My family said love was a luxury we couldn't afford. They called it duty, honor." She hugged the blanket tighter around her shoulders. "I ran. They found me, said I had brought shame on them. They chained me up, left me there to think about what I had done." Ethan closed his eyes, overwhelmed by a wave of anger and sorrow on her behalf. He reached out, placing a hand gently on her trembling shoulder. "You did nothing wrong," he said firmly. "You deserve to be free, to be loved." Tears slid down Elena's cheeks, and soon Ethan's own eyes burned. They stood there together, two broken souls stitched together by shared pain and a newfound hope that maybe, just maybe, healing was possible. A year later, the little house still creaked and groaned under the weight of its years, but it was no longer a place of sorrow. Morning light bathed the kitchen where Ethan flipped pancakes, his once constant weariness replaced by a quiet joy. At the table, Elena braided Maisie's hair, both of them laughing freely. Ethan now worked maintenance at the local elementary school. The job wasn't glamorous, but it was steady, and it brought him a deep sense of pride. Elena had found her calling, too, volunteering at a local women's shelter, helping others escape the chains she had once known so intimately. Her story, once a source of shame, became a beacon of hope for those trapped in darkness. And whenever Maisie introduced her proudly as "my mom," Ethan's heart felt like it could burst from the fullness of it all. One evening, after Maisie had fallen asleep, Ethan and Elena sat on the porch, hands entwined, watching fireflies dance against the velvet sky. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to, because they knew that their love wasn't about grand gestures or perfect circumstances. It was about choice, the choice to keep loving even when everything inside you felt broken. And in that choice, they had found something unbreakable. Sometimes, it's the broken who save the broken. And when love is given freely, even by those who have nothing left to give, it returns 100-fold, a quiet, enduring miracle.